Now, I'm all for getting people with business experience into government. That's especially true for positions that affect policy towards the private sector. You want people who know what they're talking about. But the American people also want to know that when business leaders serve in government, they're representing the interests of all American business, not just their own business. That is a big part of the Drain the Swamp agenda. So, with the help of the brilliant Government Accountability Institute, we took a close look at our current Commerce Secretary and his current business interests. What we found will shock you. Wilbur Ross is tonight's Swamp Watch. President Trump's aggressive trade policy is one of the key planks of the pro-worker populist platform he campaigned on in 2016. Recently, the president has made good on his promises by imposing significant tariffs on imports of steel. At the forefront of the Trump administration's trade efforts is Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who, it turns out, is no stranger to the steel industry. Ross earned a large portion of his wealth with incredibly timely investments in struggling steel companies in the early 2000s. He managed to buy one such company, LTV, just a week before President George W. Bush imposed his own tariffs on steel imports, dramatically raising the value of the company. Ross's steel investments became so valuable that less than 3 years after the Bush tariffs, Ross sold them to Indian steel giant ArcelorMittal for $4.5 billion, turning a $3 million personal investment by Ross into a $260 million profit, and also earning him a seat on the board of ArcelorMittal, which would become the world's largest steel producer. Nothing wrong with that, right? Just a smart businessman who made a lot of money and is now putting his expertise to use in government for the benefit of all of us. But is it, though? President Trump's steel tariffs included a number of exemptions, which mean big business for companies that bring steel from those countries to the United States. Nautical Bulk Holdings, a shipping corporation based in Bermuda, is one of them. When it was started in 2013, investors spent $100 million on 8 64,000-ton Ultramax ships from China. They began shipping products in 2015, and since May 2016, 458 out of their 735 shipments to the United States, that's 62%, have included steel from South Korea, one of the countries with a temporary exemption from steel tariffs. The fate of that exemption is now in the hands of our Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who's negotiating these tariffs. Guess who co-founded the shipping firm bringing steel here from South Korea, Nautical Bulk Holdings, and who remains an owner? It's kind of unbelievable, even for regular viewers of Swamp Watch, but the answer is Wilbur Ross. He's negotiating over South Korean steel imports while making money from importing South Korean steel. But not only is Ross still an owner of Nautical Bulk Holdings, his chief of staff at the Commerce Department, Wendy Teramoto, is listed as a director of Nautical Bulk Shipping, a business associated with Nautical Bulk Holdings, even though she claims to have resigned from the company in July 2017. And Nautical Bulk is not the only shipping company Wilbur Ross is invested in with massive conflicts of interest. Navigator Holdings is an oil and gas shipping firm with a number of international clients, including a major oil company in Turkey, which has recently been considered for economic sanctions. Ross bought a 19% stake in the company in 2011 and increased it to 39% in 2013, according to SEC filings. He also served as a company director between 2012 and 2014. In November 2017, 8 months after joining the Trump administration, Ross announced that he would divest from Navigator Holdings. But as of today, there is no evidence he's kept that promise. And that's not even the end of it. Ross's private equity firm, W.L. Ross & Company, also co-founded and partially owns another shipping company, the Transportation Recovery Fund. That one specializes in the importing of auto parts. Do you think that might affect Wilbur Ross's handling of President Trump's proposed tariffs on auto imports? But wait, there's more. According to SEC filings, in 2014, Ross's firm owned 32% of another company called Diamond Shipping, one of the world's largest owners and operators of medium-range product tankers. Ross even served as chairman of the company until joining the Commerce Department. Like Navigator Holdings, Ross promised to divest from Diamond Shipping in November 2017. But again, there's no evidence he actually did. So let's take a look at some of Diamond Shipping's, in other words, Wilbur Ross's clients. It's quite the motley crew. There's Lukoil and Novatek, two of the largest energy companies in Russia. There's Gazprom, the notorious Russian state-owned industrial giant and the world's largest producer of natural gas. Another client is PetroChina, the Chinese state-owned oil and gas company. The brutal communist dictatorship in Beijing may be planning world domination, but hey, let's not let that stop America's Commerce Secretary doing business with them while in office. Wow, talk about globalism. Wilbur Ross must be the toast of Davos. But wait, he's not done. There's another real charmer on Wilbur Ross's diamond shipping client list, PDVSA. What's that, you ask? Oh, just the state-owned oil company of Venezuela. Look, Ross is not the first business person in government with blatant conflicts of interest. President Obama's Commerce Secretary Penny Pritzker, a billionaire heir to the Hyatt hotel fortune, owned another company, Artemis Real Estate, which bought a building in Alexandria, Virginia, that they then rented to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, part of Pritzker's own Commerce Department, for $1.4 million a year. Her department even awarded a $10 million grant to a clean energy company co-chaired by her own cousin, Nick Pritzker. But this stuff from Wilbur Ross is in a different league of swampiness. Did Wilbur Ross tell President Trump about these conflicts? Does the president know that the man negotiating tariffs designed to protect American workers from imports is making money from shipping those imports to America? It is truly astonishing. When President Trump gets back from Singapore, let's hope he finds time to toss Wilbur Ross. By the way, we reached out to Wilbur Ross's office asking if they had any comment on our story, but we have not received any response. We would love to know what you think on social media at NextRevFNC and at Steve Hilton X.